What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Stacy the Intuitive, and today I just wanted to come here and talk with y'all about a very real experience. If you are seeing this video and you were like attracted to it by the title, yeah, I got some tea for y'all, and I felt like the message that I have could apply to a lot of people, especially people who might like identify with that, like, oh, I'm an empath and like this is this or whatever. I've never really liked going around with that type of notion because I feel like everyone has the capacity for empathy, but this is a very important story about navigating in such a way in that empath narcissist dynamic and how you actually can be the narcissist and how those situations reflect narcissism back to you. We all have narcissistic traits, we all have empathetic traits, and so it's important to recognize that within you because it's just a little bit deeper than the surface might show, right? So let's get down to it. So I've been dealing with a situation. We're gonna get kind of vulnerable here, but this has been like a repeated cycle for me though anyway. It hasn't been like just one situation, but I'm finally seeing that. But I've also always been very accountable of my own energy. So like even when I'm giving things off, I've always been accountable. So I don't even really see it as true narcissism. I just think we all have narcissistic traits. But I want to break this down because I feel like having it broken down can help some people to really understand the position that they're in when they end up in these dynamics where and I'm not even going to say dealing with narcissists because I've never really dealt with a narcissist. I can't say that. But when you're dealing with that energy of being a giver and allowing people to take from you and stuff like that, I just want to talk on that a little bit. So basically, when you're in these dynamics where you're an overgiver and you're doing lots of giving in order to receive, we like to label the person that's receiving as narcissistic and self-centered, but a lot of the time we don't want to see how they're just mirroring our narcissism back to us. And it's really important to just recognize what you're hoping to get out of being a giver. Recognize like what are you projecting onto them? This notion of perfection, this notion of like, I'm so good, I give you something so good that you need to change. You need to be willing to change your entire identity for me. And I don't want to hear it if y'all are like, well, that's not what I think. But if you're continuously going back to the situation and it doesn't feel good to you and you are not really receiving much in the situation, you're giving a lot in the situation, you definitely are giving off that empathetic that narcissistic energy while you're thinking you're giving, but like we really need to see the disparity there and how we could come to the belief how we need validated so badly that what we give is so worthwhile that we're going into these situations where we know that it will be rejected or whatever, or we know that we can't get exactly what we desire. We go into those situations intentionally, we keep going back to them with hopes that somehow we're just magically gonna change people, right? And that's honestly one of the worst things that you can do, because I feel like personally, in my experience, I realized that when I was doing that to people or whatever, and it was very unconscious, so nobody's saying that, you're a narcissist, you're a terrible person, but I think it's important to really just be careful with these labels and stuff, because just acknowledging that we all have these traits within us is super important. But like, I realized for me personally, I was expecting like someone to change for me, someone to like find it more important to change for me than changing for themselves. And I feel like that in itself is where you get it all wrong, because they're reflecting back to us this want to see ourselves change, want to see our internal change, our worthiness reflected back to us, right? We're wanting to see that reflected back externally, which is so valid. Like, you should want that. But at the same time, we're not willing to make changes. Oftentimes we do come to the change finally, but in that cycle, we oftentimes are not willing to make that change of only accepting what we believe we deserve and just being the master of that, being the authoritative person who decides that. We're not willing to make that change, so we're expecting someone to do it for us. We're projecting. Okay, y'all, I'm rewatching this video and I just really want to iterate this point here. In this dynamic that I was talking about here, where you're looking for someone to validate your worthiness of love, what I'm saying is basically when you're going into situations, you need to love yourself enough to cut off and have discernment and have the wherewithal to know when something is not serving you. And it's not to say that every single time you need to cut it off, because sometimes it's family situations, sometimes you want to make the situations work, but you need to be willing to set boundaries, stick to them, commit to them, and just really hold true to what you believe that you deserve. But every time that we go back to situations, allow people to push our boundaries and stuff like that, we're just reinforcing the belief that we don't actually feel that we're worthy of love, because you're willing to fold on your own beliefs. You don't love yourself enough to maintain your beliefs in the face of something that doesn't resonate with how you feel about yourself. So in not making that choice every time, you're just reinforcing to yourself, I don't love myself enough. This person needs to love me more than I love myself in order for me to see that. You know what I mean? I just wanted to share that because that was a really important point. It isn't even necessarily in situations where someone is actually taking a lot from you. This is where it normally plays out. I don't really want to say it as anything like anyone's ever taking anything from me, because I don't feel that way, but I just need to talk on this dynamic. Because I've dealt with this in a lot of different situations, because I've just been going through the motions of thinking like it would be reflected externally, and God just kind of put me in a position where, I had to make the external change first. I had to be willing to cut off the energy that I didn't feel was reflective of me, rather than someone bringing into me what I felt I deserved. So if I hadn't realized this, if I hadn't continued on with these dynamics, I got a hanger under me, so I need to just move it real fast. Like I was saying, so if I hadn't engaged in these dynamics, if I hadn't been the way that I was, then these situations wouldn't have worked. But it was really just me, and that's the impression that you give off, I feel, to people. Because someone has actually said this to me before, but like giving off the impression that you're perfect and what you give is so good and that they need to change for you, and in that you're not even accepting the person for who they truly are. And I think that that's where the empathetic nature needs to come through. You say that you're so empathetic, but to really encompass that full empathy is to understand how you're literally rejecting someone in their most present state. You don't have their best interest at heart, you have your best interest at heart. And for me, it was like the realization of, do I actually really care for this person? Do I want to see them be their best selves for them, or do I want to see them be their best selves for me? And so that's where I had to make the hard decision. And this can apply in really anything, but the hard decision to let that person go so that they could be their best self, so that they could find their best self for them, or just get to fully embody their best self in the present moment without this type of energy that I'm putting onto them, projecting this need for them to change. Because it's really wrong to do that to people, and we should realize that, like, it's wrong to do that to people. And then I was just filled with all of this feeling of like sadness at how I could have possibly made someone feel like what they presently are is not enough, And that's why I say, like, obviously I'm not a narcissist. A narcissist is not someone who can really feel that, but I do believe we all have narcissistic traits, right? But I feel like that dynamic plays out a lot in our collective right now, where we're having people who are giving a lot and people who are receiving a lot, and both ends have their own issues at hand. Like, a person who is receiving a lot and not able to give maybe already feels like what they have to offer is not enough. So being in a situation with someone who gives a lot, who wants to receive, is not really going to be conducive, right? So we love to be like, oh my God, this person did me so dirty, blah, blah, blah. But really, we're not looking at how we're doing ourselves dirty, torturing ourselves, and not actually reflecting, like, being the reflection of a person who knows their worth and value, not actually being the reflection of a person who like cares for other people as they are in their present states. So I just had to have that little realization, because I was like, am I the problem? Yes, you are the problem. Most of the time, it's you who's the problem in your own life. But yeah, it's just me realizing, like, yeah, I created this dynamic. I was a part in this dynamic. It takes two to tango. And this can show up in any situations, work situations, love life, family, whatever. But you cannot go around just like placing your energy onto people and blaming them. That's not right. I felt personally like really bad when I realized that. I'm looking out there, I think I see like a bee or something, but I felt really bad when I realized that I was projecting that energy of imperfection onto that person. That wasn't right. But from my perspective, I just felt like they were saying that what I was giving wasn't enough, you know? And so we kind of have to like work through. I'm seeing like this huge spider web. Maybe it wasn't a spider web, but I'm like, that is a big spider web. Anyway, but like what I was reading it as was like that what I was giving wasn't enough. And so obviously I was upset, blah, 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 and projecting that onto them like, you're so bogus, blah, 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 whatever, every time that I would feel those emotions. And for a person who already is feeling like, who isn't able to give because they don't think that what they give is enough or whatever, that's very hurtful. And inevitably for a person who doesn't receive to not receive, it's going to be very hurtful, you know? So just recognize the part that you play in certain dynamics. You have to always be willing to see your part in dynamics and how you create the things that are going on in your life, and being really mindful. If you really want to say, I'm an empath, then you need to actually see people's feelings and see how they may be feeling and how your energy impacts them. Because in this present like society, I see a lot of people being like, well, I'm an empath and like everybody just takes from me. But like, do you see how that narrative like might actually be hurtful to someone? Like, it's possible that you're also hurting someone. So be mindful, y'all. But yeah, a lot of the time in those dynamics, you just have to allow people to like see their best selves. And if you truly care about them, like, you will want them to just be in an energy where they can see their best selves. And if you're not at a point where you can truly facilitate that environment, then you have to be willing to let them be who they are, cut the cord, whatever, because that's your duty to self and that's your duty to them. And in that process, it's like you have the power to give and receive healing. And that should always be, always be the aim if you're truly navigating with like love and compassion and empathy for others. So yeah, you know, I'm very happy to have learned that lesson. I'm very happy to have learned that lesson with all of my trials. You know, I'm very grateful and I have no type of ill will, but a lot of the times I see people like leave these situations just with such a victim mindset. But like, we really just need to be grateful and really see people as they are, with just so much love, you know, without the need to judge who they are, because that is when you create those like nasty dynamics. So, you know, hopefully this helped someone. Hopefully this resonated. We're kind of getting personal here, but I just felt like I needed to share this. Like, someone needed to hear this. I know there are people walking around thinking that people just do them so dirty, but they don't realize how it's just reflecting how dirty they do themselves. It's like, you let yourself stay in these situations. You let yourself, you know, be taken advantage of. You let your boundaries be crossed. You let other people's boundaries be more important, but they're the problem. You need to like make that change for yourself in order to see that change be made in your reality. But that's why you might find yourself continuously hitting walls, because it's like you're not willing to see the situation from the other perspective, and you're also not willing to see it from what your internal is trying to tell you, right? So then when you navigate forward, you can know what it is that you need, what it is that other people might need. You can like identify those things and be actually considerate of them, right? And support people in being their most authentic selves, and also support yourself most importantly. Because one of my favorite YouTubers, Queen Cup, the other day she was talking about how, you know, you are the only person who's going to love you as much as you do. And this is a super important point, because we're looking for people when we go through these trials of like giving, trying to get people to validate our worthiness of love. When we do that, we're trying to get someone to love us as much as we should love ourselves. And the way that you love yourself is only possible via you, you know? It's only the capacity by which you love yourself can only be done by you. And you're looking for someone to reflect that love. It's like, if you can't do it for yourself, if they can't do it for themselves, if they haven't done it for themselves, like whatever have you. But if it's not for them, if they're not doing it for themselves, what makes you think they should do it for you? what makes you so great that they should do it for you? And it's not even to say that you're not great, but it's to say, in what world does your sense of self overcome someone else's? I don't think dynamics would ever work where someone changes for another person. And I've never had that in my mind, like, this person's gonna change for me. It was, you know, when I've dealt with these types of situations, I've just thought like my changes would inevitably get them to change, just like energetically. But really, it was just the need for me to like be willing to see the energies playing out in the present without expectations, and just truly allow my resonance to shine through and just navigate in a way that is reflecting only truth and not this self-fulfilling prophecy or self-deception about how things are being done to me, rather than me being the initiator of my own life, right? So yeah, you should never look for someone to change for you. You should never look for dynamics to reflect change back to you, unless obviously that's a supportive process that has been agreed to. But you should always want to see the people that you love and care about change for themselves, because that's the most beautiful thing ever. So for me, I, you know, have had to disconnect from, you know, situations that I was looking for that. But what I'm most excited to see is, you know, just these people change on their own accord, being their own people. Like, that's what I really care about. So I don't know, I'm at a different point in life, you know. I just felt like this was a big shift and I really wanted to share. And I feel like this is a huge shift for my entire life. Like, even in friendship situations where, you know, I felt like the support that I give or whatever to friends might not be reciprocated in the same way. A lot of the times, like, I might feel like, okay, I need to get out of the situation. But really, you just need to be willing to accept people as they are. Like, we focus so much on the negatives that we don't actually acknowledge the positives. But anyway, I'm going into a whole spiel now. That's a different conversation. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that it resonated with someone, and I'll see you next time. Bye. So I realized that I'm a narcissist. No, I don't even want to start it like that. Okay.